Welcome to Syd and Malcolm, heard exclusively on malcolmpresents.com. And I have here Syd Mandelbaum. Good morning, Syd, or good afternoon.
Thank you so much. And always good to be on this podcast. We're able to have discourse on a number of subjects and how they affect Rock and Wrap It Up.
Yeah, well, that's originally how we got in touch with you, with the Rock and Wrap It Up. For those who are unfamiliar, tell us all about Rock and Wrap It Up.
Well, Rock and Wrap It Up is a global think tank which is set up to reduce poverty on all levels. We work fighting hunger. We try to get agencies to reduce the causes of poverty, which in many cases are jobs that are not available or job training that's not there, psychological issues that need to be presented, academic issues that need to be remedied, and all these things add to the poverty that is in the United States.
Mm-hmm. And you started this with what as you say, an epiphany that you had at the Wailing Wall in Israel?
I did. Actually, in 1981, my father and I went to the first world gathering of Jewish Holocaust survivors. And there, in a moment of complete unconsciousness, he and I were sitting together, we looked at each other, and something passed between us. It was minutes before we both spoke. And I said, "Dad, did you feel that?" He said, "Completely." I said, "I feel like I have to go back to America and change the world." And he says, "I feel the same thing." And from that moment, 40 years ago, I had a series of things that happened. Some of the reasons from before I had gone to the wall, but most of them afterwards. And the main thing that I came up with was recording the documentaries of Holocaust survivors and camp liberators. That was one of my epiphanies. And we started doing that in 1982. We taped for over a dozen years. And then I gave the project to Steve Spielberg at Amblin Entertainment in 1993, and he taped for another dozen years.
Yeah, I think I've heard of him.
Well, many of us have, some haven't. The reality is that that one moment of taping survivors led me to a gentleman by the name of Fran Purcell, who was a liberator of Buchenwald. Fran Purcell asked me to serve on the Human Rights Commission of Nassau County, which happened to have been headed by my former Air Force commander, Colonel Paris Swoops, who I knew from the time I was 18. Through Paris, I served on that commission for 18 years. And during that time, I had a series of symposiums at Hofstra University with two other new commissioners at that time, mm-hmm. where we wanted to teach children how to recognize bias and prejudice. And we would have workshops on people that were in that field, and we would get high school juniors to come in. We would have keynote speakers. And one of my keynote speakers, our first one, was Sandy Chapin, the widow of Harry Chapin. And Sandy spoke, and a year later, she asked me to serve on the board of Long Island Cares, a regional food bank, in 1987. And in 1990, she asked me to have and coordinate their first fundraiser, which I did. And we went to speak to one of the first people that managed her late husband, Harry Chapin, and his name was Ron Delsner. And Ron Delsner was very well known, and he was a music impresario, brought the Beatles to Shea Stadium in 1964. And Ron just said to me, "Syd, I have so much food left over at Jones Beach Theater, where we have 40 to 50 shows a summer, and I throw it out. What can I do?" I said, "I would love to recover that food." And that's how Rock and Wrap It Up was born. Yeah. But if I could regress a little bit, the anti-Semitism and anti-people of color, and was something that was very, very sadly in many of the high schools in Nassau County. And we taught students to say one thing. If they were in a group of their friends, maybe their friends were all Black, or maybe the friends were all white, and someone said something that was offensive, we taught them to have the nerve to say, that offends me. And that would stop that one person from being laughed at or laughed with by others, because you've shown that that bothers you. If it was an anti-white comment, it was anti-Black comment, anti-Asian, especially anti-Jewish. So Jewish anti-Semitism is the largest in Nassau County over the years of people that have complaints, more than any other ethnic group. And that is still to this day.
I thought Nassau County was primarily Jewish.
Oh, absolutely not.
No? Okay.
One third. And it was sad today, and this is 35 years later, the Washington Post had an article on bias, and it didn't include anti-Semitism. It included anti-Asian, anti-Black, anti-Latino. And right now in the world, anti-Semitism has grown by 124%. Yet the Washington Post chose not to include it in its article today.
Well, how about in this country alone, in the U.S.?
In this country alone, it's gone up 124% since 2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Anti-Semitism is huge. And most of it is in the big cities where there are Muslim populations.
Yeah.
Most of the colleges that have Muslim populations, they are the ones that are targeting Jews. It's some on the right, obviously, but not as much as what's coming out of the Palestinian communities on college campuses.
Well, the question is, are the Muslims creating the anti-Semitism, or they're only awakening the anti-Semitism in the Christian world?
They are not. Christians have their own set of policies to deal with. Muslims bring here their hatred of Jews from all the countries that they have come from. They come here and they can't believe, the first thing they say is, oh my God, Jews are not criticized on the media. It must be a biased Jewish media. Oh, Jews must own the media. And that's why they are not corrected if things are being said about them. So they bring here this dogma that they had in the countries that they were in.
Well, aside from the obvious question of Israel, that the Muslims, because the Palestinians, so to speak, are anti-Israeli, was there a bias against Jews prior to Israel?
Oh, absolutely.
And the question is why? What did they have against what did the Muslims have against the Jews?
If you go back to Constantine's Sword, which was the first book that was written by priests about anti-Semitism, and it goes back 2,000 years from some of the mistakes that were made, even by Jesus, that have brought anti-Semitism to in the forefront. First of all, there is a blood libel that was done in the 12th, 13th, and 14th century in Europe that basically said, as soon as Jews were in a community and they had wealth, the neighbors would try to take the wealth away by saying, oh, they use Christian children to make matzah. And Christians knew nothing about Passover. So right away, there was a blood libel and that has carried on for 700 years to this day, that people still accuse Jews of using Christian blood to make matzah. And this is something that has been all over England, where Jews were kicked out of England in 1288, all over France, Spain, 1492, Jews again kicked out and their wealth taken. So wherever there is Jewish wealth, it is taken by the powers that be. Some of the other issues, which are difficult to discuss because I have a lot of Christian friends. Right now, our Pope, not my Pope, but the Pope of Christians Catholics all over the world last week in a homily to Christian students said that the Jewish Torah is no longer a place of salvation or life. They should not believe in the Torah. And he said that, and all of the scholars of Israel have already reached out to the Pope and said, what did you mean by that?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What did he mean by that?
In 1963, at the Ecumenical Council, it said that council, Jews were not liable for the death of Christ.
Right.
And Jews have their own religion, which they should be practicing. We are not here to convert Jews to Christianity. And this Pope has the nerve to say that the Torah does not support life and Jews should not abide and listen to it.
Well, was there a reason he said that?
No, no one knows. No one knows. Did he say it that he really believed it? Did someone do research for this group of people that he was speaking to? But he said it. I put it on my Facebook page.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Oh my God, well, you're not on the East Coast. You
That's
may not
true.
have it in your media. We have it in our media. Go to my Facebook page, and I have an article from about 3 days ago, and it cites chapter and verse how the Israeli non-secular and secular Jews reached out to the Vatican and they want an answer.
Yeah.
Where did this come from?
How long ago did he say this?
3 days ago.
Oh, okay. Because I generally like the Pope. I like what he expounds.
I mean, I have no feelings because of all of the anti-Semitism that was generated by the church. There'd be no Holocaust if there was no anti-Semitism from the church.
Well,
And the Pope during that time, Pope Pius the 12th, aided and abetted Nazis.
Yeah, that I know.
So why would we have any faith in Christians today anywhere? We have to be our own strength, and that's what we do.
Well, I'm a simplistic person. If it wasn't for the Jews, the Jewish faith, there'd be no Christianity,
and there'd be no Islam.
Because the Old Testament is they predicted a second coming.
See, one of the problems that which was brought up in Constantine's sword is that when Christ went to the second temple and he saw money exchangers on the steps of the temple, he didn't understand it, and he was very upset about it. Had he asked anyone, and he was a country boy, he was not from the big city, Jesus. People in 2,000 years ago would travel to Israel around the time of the holidays, from as far away as Baghdad to Cairo. There were Jews living all over the Middle East, and they would come to pray at the temple, and they would bring with them their currency of their countries. Well, the people that were living in those countries would enable them to purchase doves and small animals for sacrifice. And we've done, as we do now, Shluggin Kapiris, which we do around Rosh Hashanah time, where people in certain neighborhoods will sacrifice a chicken, and they will put the sins in the chicken, and the chicken is sacrificed. Well, the same thing happened 2,000 years ago. But in order for you to purchase the chicken or the dove, you had to pay for it in Israeli currency at that time. So the money exchangers were there to help travelers exchange their money for the currency of Israel.
Interesting.
And Christ didn't understand that. And he upset some of the money changer carts, through their carts over the side, and he was arrested for it. And he probably did not know. And I would rather believe that he just didn't understand why there were these money changers before you went into the great temple. It was so that you could practice the religion of sacrificing animals at the altar for the health of the year, especially around this time, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, or other holidays. So it goes back 2,000 years that there has been misconceptions about our religion. And it's sad, which leads me to 9/11, because 9/11 was no doubt the Islamic terrorists wanting to destroy a Christian / Jewish, Judeo-Christian country, America. They hated the Jews and they hated the Christians. So the Muslims that trained to be these suicide pilots were there to destroy as much life as possible of Jews and Christians. And 9/11 for me was a horrific day. I was supposed to be in World Trade Center on September 11th at 9 in the morning, meeting event planners from England. One of my board members, J Magazine, was head of catering and Windows on the World, and wanted me to meet these event planners so that we could put into contracts that food could be given to the hungry wherever they would make their events in the New York area. Well, 2 weeks before that, I was already asked to speak first at Berkeley to a student union group, and then I was asked to speak at Fox in LA, and that's why I was at the World Trade Center. But we had already had an event on June 18th, 2001. Rock and Wrap It Up had its first fundraiser where we honored Leslie Levetman, one of our board members, one of the founders of MTV. And MTV ran an event for us, and we wound up making over $500,000 in 2001, which paid for our organization for at least 3 years, because our budget at that time was about $150,000 a year. But we honored Leslie Levetman, and the heads of MTV, Tom Freston, who was the chairman of MTV, Judy McGrath, who was president of MTV, were all there to honor Leslie. Wow. And one of the great things that happened, we had over 500 people came to the dinner there, which J Magazine ran for us. And the amazing thing was that we were asked, Judy McGrath called me up, she knew me, and we'd already been picking food up from MTV's Video Music Awards since 1994. So for 7 years, we had already been doing food recovery through MTV, thousands of pounds of food after the event that took place from the Video Music Awards. And Judy McGrath said to me, you know, we would like to have entertainment here, and we have 3 artists that we'd like to recommend. One of them is Natalie Merchant, who was in the band The Pretenders. She knew Leslie and wanted to perform. The second one was an up-and-coming girl named Jewel that they were really pushing on MTV. And the third one was an unknown girl in college named Alicia Keys. She was 19 years old. Keys,
it sounds familiar.
Well, she wasn't then at all. So I said to Judy, who do you recommend? Who are you pushing? And she says, well, honestly, Alicia Keys we are playing her a lot now, and she hasn't performed before. So I said, well, let's go with her. And she was a junior at Columbia, and she did her first piece ever for Rock and Wrap It Up. Wow. And from there she exploded, so to speak, and we did do food recovery with her for other tours, but it was a great night. Yeah, but to go back to what happened to us, we started picking up food at Jones Beach Theater and other arenas 10 years earlier, and we would have a letter from the band that would say, Rock and Wrap It Up is going to be picking up food prepared but not served, and this letter is to allow them in. And I would have people all over the country have these letters. At that time, we would fax them. And there'd be anywhere from 20 to 40 stops in most of the bands touring throughout the country and Canada. And I would send out faxes that would have that letter on it. And security would know that without that letter, we couldn't get in. But with that letter, we could absolutely go in and do the food recovery. And this went on until 9/11, when for the next 6 months, we had to take a hiatus because no security of any arena would allow anyone backstage for fear of Muslims killing them.
Yeah.
And so it cost us tens of thousands of meals that were thrown away during that time until things settled down and we were able to use the letters again. And our people all went through metal detectors, which was set up in every backstage. There was no metal detectors before 2001.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
None. And after 2001, paradigm shift. So we were very much affected by it, as was the country.
Oh, the country, definitely, yeah.
So we recognized this, and we then told the bands it was even more important not just to send us the letter, but to put it in the contract. So they had been remiss, because once we had the letter, that was good enough for us. But at the beginning of Rock and Wrap It Up, I had all of my bands put it into contracts, into writers that would stipulate all edible leftover food, prepared but not served, cannot be thrown out, must feed the hungry. Rock and Wrap It Up will facilitate the recovery. And the one paragraph in the band's writer was good enough for the caterer to know, oh, we can't throw our food away. We must feed the hungry with it.
Well, question, the security backstage or at the venue when the band is performing, who hires them? Is it the promoter? Is it the band?
Promoter, all promoter. Now, there are individual times that the act itself or the individual could have had a death threat against them, could have had an irate or sycophant fan want to get to them. And some of them would hire personal security guards that would take them to and from the stage to the backstage room.
Yeah, I saw the movie, The Bodyguard. That was, he was.
So these things had happened, but before 9/11, there was, compared to what it was very lax. And after 9/11, and to this day, now, it's not laxed at all.
Well, again, that was the new normal now is, as far as planes, and everybody is, going through metal detectors. And
we had, so J Magazine went to the breakfast at the 107th floor on 9/11 and was killed. And he shouldn't have even been there, but he had to meet these event planners from England, and they were all killed also. There were 100, 105, 106 of them. And they were all killed that night at a breakfast, that day at the breakfast there. The chef there was a guy named Michael LaMonaco, pretty well-known chef. And Michael's eyeglasses broke on a train, and he was in the basement of the building at an optician getting his eyeglasses fixed. And that saved his life. And over the years, I honor Jay. This is Jay.
Yeah. Okay.
And
got it.
This is my tattoo that I did in honor to Jay, 9/11, with his initials.
Wow.
And I wear that every day. And when they found whatever piece of Jay they found, they had a funeral, and I was one of the people that did the eulogy.
Yeah. Well, as I say, there but for the grace of God go I, even though I'm not necessarily a believer in God.
You know what? I was at the airport. I was getting on a 7 a.m. flight back from LA because I'd been gone a week. And I'm in American terminal in LAX, and Diane calls me up, my wife, and says, Syd, you're not going to believe this. An airplane had an accident and hit into the World Trade Center. And it's disrupting the, on top of the World Trade Center is the electronic beacons where all of the airplanes were routed from. And she says, you may get delayed. But she used the word accident. Well, 10 minutes later, she calls me back and said, Syd, there was no accident. Another plane went into the second building. And at that point, they evacuated LAX. And I had already checked my bag. And there was no one in the airport, literally. But by grace of God, I was staying at a hotel about 10 minutes from the airport. I found my bag literally on the top of a mountain of bags because they were piling up. I took my bag, I got into a cab, and I went right back to the hotel, figuring that whoever was going to go into the hotel couldn't get there. And they allowed me to go back there, pay the same rate, which I had gotten a very good rate on. And I called Amy Riley, who was my LA Rock and Wrap It Up person. And she already knew what happened. And she said, come to my house and just stay with me for a while. Sure. So I stayed with her that morning watching all of this, and it was horrific.
I know that was.
And we knew other people that were in that building, you know, and just didn't know if they got out or not.
Yeah, well, I think I told you before the show that 9/11 is my anniversary, 9/11, 1994. And I remember that morning, I live in Los Angeles, I was preparing for work and we were talking about, where we're going out for dinner, to celebrate it, who's going to watch the kids, which happened to be my mother-in-law. And then I'm watching this thing about and I saw on TV, I think the Today Show or Good Morning America, whatever was on at the time, I saw this plane go into the World Trade Center. And I'm saying, is that a small plane? I thought it was a small plane initially because I couldn't conceive of a major, of a jetliner going into it. And I said, that might be an accident. Then I don't know how much later, within a half hour or so, I think, the second plane goes and I said, uh-oh, that's not an accident. And then to boot, that's not bad enough. I thought maybe a few floors would be destroyed, but when the building collapsed, it just went down. It was sort of like I couldn't talk for a half hour. It's like watching a horror movie.
Yeah.
Except it was real.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a philosophical question for you.
Sure.
God gave us free will, right? To do as we want. Now, if you ask a holy man about why something happened, why someone died, or why there was an accident, and he'll say it's God's will. But was it God's will? He couldn't. If we have free will, he doesn't know what's happening. So how can it be God's will if people do things? Let's say evil people do things that God does not know about. So how can it be God's will that happened?
It's a good question. I always bring up about the Holocaust. Did God fall asleep during the 5 years of the murders of 6? I've written poetry about God was asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
Where was Jesus to save other people? So many Christians were killed. These are all good questions. There's no answers, obviously.
And you talk about the Muslims hate the Jews, but they hate each other. The Shiites hate the Sunnis.
Yeah, Sunnis hate the Shia, and that'll never change, which is why the word, peace in the Middle East is an oxymoron. Yeah. If there were no Jews in the Middle East, they would still kill each other.
They would kill each other.
Yeah. It is the problem of all religions. And that's why I feel terrible for the people that are left in Afghanistan. I am so upset that the Christians who converted from Islam are being targeted now to be killed first. Mm-hmm. And there was just not enough time to get them out the way that the current plan was. But I don't want to talk about politics on that level. You know my feelings, but on a global timing, we are at a crossroads because you have a young generation that is coming up that I believe is much less religious than the generation before it. So kids who are in their teens and 20s and 30s now have much less need of religion than their parents and maybe their older siblings. And it's shown by there is a lot of need to do good deeds. We get a lot of people that are a-religious that want to fight hunger and poverty, not because they believe in a God, but they believe in man and womankind.
Yeah, that's what I believe in.
And that is where we come to offer all people that want to help us, help others. We accept every group. We have a group that we would now work with called the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom. They're a group of Jewish women and a group of Muslim women that about 10 years ago got together, first to know each other as people of God. Second, to do good deeds. And Rock and Wrap It Up works with the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom in helping them collect feminine products, soap, shampoos, sundry items, and share them with institutions that are fighting poverty in both the Christian, Jewish, and Muslim communities. And that's been one of our really nice signature projects that have happened because of this need to go beyond religion and be humans first before you go anywhere else.
Right. I'm hoping to do a show with someone I had on with your show, Reverend Harper. Who's who's an Episcopalian minister, and I want to do a show. And I think he has it's Green Faith, where he works together with
not through us, but this is your own.
No, through him, which he always he works with other ministers and different faiths to save the world, almost, for the ecology, what's happening now.
Huh?
And I want to do a show with him that people, when you go to pray, a lot of people pray for God's help versus praying so they could help God do his work,
right,
or her work. So basically it should be, we shouldn't be praying for something to do ourselves. We should do something to help people, whether it's for God or just for people's sake.
Absolutely.
That's a show I want to do. But anyway, can you believe it? Our half hour's up.
No, that went pretty quick.
That went very fast.
We're involved in stuff.
Yeah, I look forward. And one of the shows I still want to do with you is a show on anti-Semitism and survivors of the Holocaust or their children. In fact, I met a woman who was on the show, and she grew up in Brighton Beach, and her parents are survivors, both of them.
Hmm?
Anyway, we'll talk.
I would love you to take a look. Take a look at some of our collections that are housed at the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington, and you could put in there Syd Malcolm, second generation of Long Island, and I think it's about 35 interviews are still there. And you could take a look, pick whatever you want, and see how they're done.
Okay, I'll do that. And I want to go, I don't know, it's the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
Where they have the, I think I mentioned it to you, they have these Holocaust survivors who may not be around now, but they ask them a myriad of questions. And they have the students coming in, and it's like they're on stage virtual reality. They ask them questions, and I guess automatically it keys certain answers. So they can ask a question to the person who may have passed away years ago. And
so there's also a collection at USC. That's where Spielberg's tapes are being housed.
Oh, okay. Anyway, as I say, there should be a way that to reach another audience over the the internet for the Zoom. But we'll talk about that. Meantime, have a good week.
Thank you so much.
And
next week will be difficult because it's a Jewish holidays.
Right. Well, Tuesday is free. I think it starts this. I don't know whether the 6th or 7th, but we'll talk. But maybe we'll have it. Maybe we won't have it. But if I don't, well, I'll speak to you anyway. But a happy New Year.
Thank you.
L'Shana Tova.
Thank you. Good health and happiness to you and all who you love.
Right, and son I love. Bye.
Bye, bye, man.